Hello, my name is Scott Dawson. I'm coordinator of graphic design and new media at Clark State College. Thank you for joining me today. Today I'm going to be talking about online experiential learning for student success. I thought the best place to begin was with a definition for experiential learning. I've heard people describe experiential learning as learning by doing, but I think that's a little too broad. I would define experiential learning as experiences inside and outside the classroom that give students the opportunity to do real-world problem solving and critical thinking while working with a community or business collaborator or on a community, business, or entrepreneurial initiative. I also wanted to make sure we are on the same page with some of the course and online terminology before we get too far into the presentation. When I mention traditional course, I'm talking about courses that typically meet 2 or 3 times a week. I say typically because there are traditional courses that meet once a week, but for the duration of time that you would typically be doing over 2 or 3 class meetings. When I say hybrid, I'm talking about a course that meets once a week for half the time of a traditional course, with the expectation of learning materials provided online to replace traditional lecture. When I say in person during this presentation, I'm talking about a class that meets in person without use of virtual tools. Asynchronous online refers to having all learning materials in an online shell or learning management system with no class meetings. And when I talk about synchronous online, I'm talking about meeting online for class using video conferencing tools. So I'm hoping that helps clarify. Before we jump into examples and ingredients, I wanted to start with a primer to give you just a little more experiential learning context, starting with why experiential learning is a good idea. These are primarily anecdotal from my own experience, but there has been research on the success of experiential learning as an assessment tool that you can find online. When doing experiential learning with my students, it doesn't take long to see an increased investment. When you are doing something for a business client or community cause, it raises the stakes. Now a student isn't just representing themselves. There's also increased engagement. The nature of experiential learning projects causes everyone involved to need to work together to be successful. It's really difficult to hide or get lost during the process. When students aren't engaged, it quickly becomes apparent, and I found that students will often actually even hold each other accountable because they want to make a good impression for our guest business or organization. Experiential learning projects give students the opportunity to build their resume while they are still in school by working with real-world businesses and organizations. I have to admit, I hated group projects in school, but it is impossible to deny that they are essential to helping our students learn to work in teams. Experiential learning is often done with partners or in groups, but even when you are working individually, the class is still collectively working together toward a common goal with a common collaborator or client. Experiential learning is an outstanding way to assess the skills students have learned during their time in the program and also assess where the student still has gaps. Experiential learning can also be used to turn a regular project you might be doing in class into an honors project with an increased rigor that naturally comes from working with an actual business or community organization. We've already mentioned teamwork. Experiential learning also helps students continue to build other essential soft skills like communication, time management, and problem solving. Students are also building their network when they do experiential learning. As I will show later in this presentation, experiential learning in class has led to students getting outside work from some of our collaborators. I wanted to take a moment to explore the various types of experiential learning. SOCI, or the Strategic Ohio Council for Higher Education, does a nice job exploring the differences between some of the types we have here on their website that I've linked at the bottom of this slide. In co-ops, we have a 50-50 partnership basically between the employer and academics, where the time working with the student is typically split equally between the two. In capstones, the work with business collaborators is happening in the classroom under the guidance of the instructor as a mentor during the process. In an internship, students typically work with the employer. Students can still receive mentoring or support from academic instructors, but the primary learning is with the employer. In service learning, projects are typically done for a cause, nonprofit, or service organization that may normally not have the means to pay to have this work completed. Much like a capstone, they tend to take place in the classroom with the instructor serving as a mentor to the process. Apprenticeships are experiential learning experiences that help students learn a trade. Students are usually working hand in hand with someone within a company to learn the craft and skills necessary to be successful in that industry. My brother-in-law became a professional photographer after being an apprentice. Field experiences are experiential learning experiences centered around fields that require certification or accreditation of some sort. Teaching, nursing, and police are examples of fields where students will complete field experiences before they complete their degree program. A practicum is typically an experiential learning project with a real-world focus or intent. Senior projects are a good example of practicums. In job shadows, a student is going to a business or organization to observe how they operate. Business partners will often take the time to sit down with students to discuss their work and take the time to answer any questions the students may have. This presentation will primarily focus on the kind of experiential learning projects that you would find in a capstone or service learning course, so that you can replicate this type of work in your own classrooms. You will find that you can fit experiential learning of this type into any course, even if the course you are teaching is not a capstone or service learning course. Before the pandemic, I was under the impression that effective experiential learning was only really feasible in person. But the pandemic forced some epiphanies, as I'm sure it has done for many of you. When it hit in March of 2020, the capstone and service learning courses I was teaching suddenly went to asynchronous online delivery in the middle of the semester. We quickly pivoted to using online tools to interact with clients, share and submit files, and do presentations, and I was pleased that in spite of everything we were all facing, there was 100% completion from the students that were in those courses when the pandemic began. During last school year, I delivered my capstone and service learning courses in the synchronous online format, meeting with students through Blackboard Collaborate. I found that synchronous online delivery of experiential learning doesn't just work, but it works well. I'm continuing to do synchronous online format for this year, and will even be doing hybrid synchronous online teaching this spring. The pandemic forced everyone to get comfortable with virtual communication tools, whether they were ready or not, and I think the use of these tools is only going to grow. I always joke that the secret sauce or the Thousand Island dressing of my programs is that I ask an advisory of employers twice a year what our students need to know to work, and that's what we teach. Last year, the advisory said that it was critical that our students get comfortable with remote collaboration and work, because this is where a lot of industries are headed. In this next section, we're going to take a look at some example experiential learning projects. But first, I need to give a disclaimer. I can give examples all day, but I don't know your subject area like you. I hope these examples serve as a jumping off place where you can think of your own experiential learning projects within your discipline. If you have any that you want to share, I would love to hear from you. My contact information is at the end of this presentation. In the graphic design program, the experiential learning that we are typically doing with clients or collaborators involves various print projects, advertising campaigns, logo design and branding, and/or digital illustration. In the new media program, the experiential learning with clients tends to center on doing website design and training, multimedia content creation, social media strategy work, or usability analysis and testing. I wanted to share a few specific examples from the graphic design program. Take Pause was an interesting collaboration that we did with Ridgewood School, where 5th graders created poems and were then paired with students in our Digital Illustration 2 course who digitally illustrated the poems. A poster series was produced and printed and displayed at Ridgewood's Multicultural Night, along with being posted around the community. This particular project was done in a traditional in-person course, with the 5th graders being bussed over to our lab to meet with our students. The Ohio Communication Association, or OCA, is made up of communication faculty across the state of Ohio. For the last several years, our students have created the conference program cover and the Save the Date postcard that goes out to all their members. Our students also created a poster series and did logo development for them. The work with OCA has been done in both a traditional in-person and synchronous online format. Because of the successful partnership, OCA has actually hired our students to do design work with them outside of class. Every year, our graphic design service learning capstone students have done design work for Clark State's Volley for the Cure, a volleyball event open to students, faculty, and staff that raises money and awareness for breast cancer. The proceeds are donated to the Breast Cancer Endowment Fund of Clark County Incorporated. Our students create a teaser poster and banner and an event poster to help promote the event, and also create a t-shirt that is sold to participants and those attending to help raise money for the cause. This project has been completed in traditional in-person, synchronous online, and even asynchronous online versions of the course. I wouldn't be doing a good job as a teacher if I didn't take a moment to share some of our students' amazing work at Clark State. Here are a few of the posters that were created during the Take Pause project. And here is some sample work from the Volley for the Cure. In New Media, one of our students did an honors project version of the final usability test design, summary, and presentation assignment within our asynchronous online digital aesthetics and user experience course. Instead of the student picking a website, as is normally done, they were assigned to do the usability testing for the Clark County Historical Society's website and online archive, and also make usability recommendations to the client. This led to the Clark County Historical Society working with one of our students in an independent study version of the New Media capstone, and recently even hiring one of our students full-time to do multimedia content work and social media marketing. The independent study was running in person until the pandemic forced it to finish as an asynchronous online course. Our New Media students did a safety video and a training video for local manufacturing company, the Cascade Corporation, when the New Media capstone was still running as a traditional in-person course. The Cascade Corporation was so happy with the work that the safety video was shared with their international headquarters, and the company donated funds to create a scholarship to support future New Media majors. In Alex's server-side programming and database course within our web design and development program at Clark State, students worked on a web application for Audubon Miami Valley that allows the organization to input and track data for a bird population study. The course is in a hybrid synchronous online format. Experiential learning projects can also be scenario-based with hypothetical clients. In Diane's Advanced Topics course, which runs in a traditional synchronous online format, students create an e-commerce website for Harry's Hot Sauce. At this point, you may be saying, we get it that experiential learning works for technical computer courses, but what about gen eds and other courses? Well, your wish is my command. English instructors at Clark State, Chris and Tabitha, run a Voices of the Valley poetry contest every year, including area high schools, technical schools, and colleges. They partner with Wittenberg University to provide faculty judges, and a Voices of the Valley journal is published, which includes work from contest winners, the Creative Writing class, and the Creative Writers Club. The project is facilitated outside of class, but it could just as easily be completed as part of a class. In sociology, Dee's Social Problems course does an experiential learning project every year. I was particularly impressed with their social movement to evaluate and effect change in the area of campus safety at Clark State. The project involved the college's Senior Vice President of Technology, Safety, and Strategic Initiatives and the Coordinator of Risk Management. And the exciting part is that the recommendations from the students have already begun to be implemented. This is a traditional in-person course, but Dee has had to switch to virtual delivery during the pandemic and has still continued the experiential learning project. Students in Pam's Principles of Management class evaluate Clark State's strategic plan and create questions to ask the president of the college who attends the course virtually. This leads to good discussion about the plan and often results in the president asking questions of the students as well. This class is offered in a hybrid, synchronous online format. In John's Introduction to Project Management, a student created his own experiential learning project, where he made a process improvement recommendation to his manufacturing employer to integrate Zoller Gold tool management software. The process improvement was accepted and is being implemented. John's classes are asynchronous online. In Introduction to Educational Psychology, an asynchronous online course, Carol has her students design a service learning project with a list of potential collaborators. It is not implemented, but I was interested in the higher learning aspect of students actually designing their own experiential learning project that could be implemented later in a course. Hopefully, the brainstorming has already started and the wheels are turning in your own mind with the possibilities in your own subject area. I thought of a couple of other hypothetical examples as well. For an Introduction to Mass Communication course, students could do a podcast where they interview local nonprofits, small business owners, or even community members making an impact. Our smartphones and our laptops are pretty capable recording devices, and there is open source free online audio editing software called Audacity. The podcast could be hosted on SoundCloud, which is essentially the YouTube of audio. SoundCloud produces the RSS feed automatically for podcasts, and you can even integrate analytics for free using PodTrack. I've given presentations called Tech Teach at my institution, where I share open source online technology tools that are helpful in the classroom. And here I have linked an open educational resource that would allow you to set up your own podcast for free using the tools I have already described. I was also thinking, what about doing experiential learning in our second-year statistics course at Clark State, where students look at data provided by local organizations or even data at the college and present their analysis and findings to the organization or collaborator chosen? This could be facilitated in asynchronous or synchronous online courses. By now, you are probably thinking, enough of the examples, let's get into the nuts and bolts. I agree. In order to create your own online experiential learning experiences, we need to look at the ingredients and technology tools that go into a successful experiential learning project. We need to first look at establishing the right fit with the appropriate class. Experiential learning impact is maximized when you have a good collaborator. Because my experiential learning work is in the fields of graphic design and new media, you will notice that I use the term collaborator and client interchangeably throughout this presentation. Please don't be confused by this, I'm talking about the same thing. The student approach will be important to consider before structuring the actual project. We will also look at your own role as instructor in the process. The schedule will help us to make the workload accessible and establish key deadlines. Careful communication with both the client and students will be critical. I believe that successful experiential learning should have a strong conclusion, and a presentation and/or report is a good way to facilitate this. Reflection should be done throughout the process to make sure no learning passes anyone by. It is important before getting started to make sure the class you have in mind is the right fit for the project. In my own experiential learning work, sometimes the project comes to me first from a potential collaborator or client, and sometimes the course I'm teaching informs what I can do or even should do. I hope that you are already starting to see that experiential learning doesn't just need to be in a capstone course, but it is worth saying out loud again. It also doesn't always have to just be in the classroom. But if it is in a course, it is important to make sure that the project does align with the learning outcomes of the course. You also need to carefully look at the scope of the project and the deliverables that are going to be produced. Is it realistic in the time available to integrate it into a class? You also want to ask if this is a good fit for being included in a class, or if the project is really better as an internship. The scope and deliverables needed by the client should help make this clear. The last consideration is whether or not you feel this experiential learning project is a good fit for traditional or hybrid delivery. A strong indicator is the amount of communication needed between you as the instructor, the students, and the client. Should the project be in person or online? A helpful indicator would be your own comfort level with the technology tools you would need to use and have the students use. If you are thinking about doing the project online, should it be asynchronous or synchronous? A lot of this will again depend on your comfort level with technology and also on how much collaboration between the instructor and students you feel is needed to make the end product happen. If you are thinking about doing synchronous online, you need to make sure you have reliable video conferencing capabilities that allow for screen sharing for both teacher and student, for breakout rooms, and for easy file sharing and analysis. At Clark State, our learning management system is Blackboard, and I use Blackboard Collaborate, which has all these capabilities for my synchronous online capstone courses. I was fortunate to serve as Community Outreach and Education Director at the Clark State Performing Arts Center before becoming a faculty member. This work had me connecting often with local businesses, nonprofits, and community organizations, so I came into experiential learning at Clark State with a well-established network. If you are looking for a collaborator or client, it can help to reach out to organizations that already have their own network established, such as your local Chamber of Commerce, Rotary, Small Business Development Organization, Kiwanis, nonprofit organizations, or churches. This way you're reaching many potential partners or potential collaborators in one approach instead of knocking door to door. Reach out to a contact at these organizations and share that you are looking for potential experiential learning projects for local students. Another great place to look is at your own institution or your own advisory board if you are a technical program. Start with your own network even. Family and friends who are running a side hustle and making money on the side are often open to support if they know it is available, but be careful when the collaborator is personal. Reach out to student affairs or your own students at your institution and ask about causes that are important to students. When it's a cause that is important to students, this also helps with investment and buy-in. Once you find a potential collaborator or client, you will want to vet them when possible if you are unfamiliar with them or their reputation in the community. To help me with this, I've partnered with the Director of Career Services at the college. They have developed an application process for all potential internship partners. If a potential collaborator is serious about the opportunity, they won't mind filling out some paperwork to make it official. Before starting an experiential learning project with a collaborator, make sure the representative you are working with is the decision maker. I always do this, but in spite of my efforts, one time the decision maker was not who I was told it was, and it was stressful for all involved. You also want to make sure that the collaborator who is also the decision maker can be at your class when you need them. It is a good test to ask the collaborator to send you information about their organization so you can share it with your students, and to send any examples similar to what they are looking for in an end product. Even better, make a deadline for when you hope to get this information to make sure they are good about getting things to you in a timely manner. When working online with collaborators, it is good to make sure up front that they feel comfortable working digitally. This can be as simple as telling them what technologies you will be using during the project. Any questions or concerns that come up will quickly reveal if there are any red flags. It is also good to make sure that your collaborator understands that they are working with students, the time limits within the semester, and that the scope of the project will not be able to change once it is agreed upon and established. Another important consideration to consider is what kind of student approach will work best based on the nature of the project. Will this project be best if it is done individually, with partners, or with teams? Can the project be developed into a contest where the selected student will have a paid internship or contract opportunity with the company? Can there be a prize developed for the person whose work is picked? When working in teams, it is important to have roles assigned to team members. As the instructor, I will typically pick the project managers based on the strengths of the students. Do you want to assign the additional roles or leave this up to the students? I often leave any other group assignments at the discretion of the students within the teams, with the expectation that they will report these out to me within a certain deadline. Having clearly defined roles can help when it comes to grading. This way, the student responsible for a gap or a lack of execution does not affect the grade of the whole group. I have listed several technology tools that can help students with collaboration. I've essentially listed the Google tools on the left and the Microsoft equivalents on the right. If your school does not have enterprise access to Microsoft Office 365 versions, it will be easier for students to use the Google versions. I typically use the Google collaboration tools in class and find that students are comfortable with these as well. My students use Google Drive to share files, Google Docs to do shared reporting or conceptual, Google Sheets to organize things like group assignments, and Google Slides to do presentations. These collaboration tools allow the items to be housed in one location on the cloud, with all students having access to make updates and contribute. In addition to the video conferencing used in class during Blackboard, students can use Google Hangouts or Google Meet to meet virtually. In experiential learning, the instructor role often switches to that of mentor while a lot of instruction happens in the experience itself. Of course, as instructor, you are responsible for any learning materials needed, the assignment and assessment, and it is critical that you set up clear expectations and course policies in the syllabus and in class. At times, you also must play the role of taskmaster to wrangle the students or even the client to focus on the deliverables in need of execution. I think it works better to have instructors serve as the communication bridge between the students and client to make sure that both parties are advocated for in the process. It's also important to have students copy you on all internal communication so you are in the loop and can help them with any skills gaps or issues that arise. I always assign groups rather than having students do this to help the groups have better skills alignment and to avoid any potential behavioral issues. During the process, there will often be learning, technical, or even HR issues that you will need to help address. The organic nature of an experiential learning project will require some pivoting at times, and you will often need to work with the students and client to help guide this. Don't be afraid to jump in as a teammate to help things get accomplished. Working side by side with your students can be a powerful example of how you are all working together for a common goal and enhance the investment of all involved. It is important to establish key deadlines up front, especially the times when the client will be coming to your class. On longer projects, I will typically set the major deadlines within the project, but encourage students to set up internal deadlines with each other and report back to me what they have decided. For the graphic design projects within the Service Learning Capstone course, I set all of the deadlines because the work for clients is completed in 3 weeks. It is up to you how organic you want to make the deadline creation process, but regardless of who sets the deadlines, you will want to have deadlines established for students to provide you the roles assigned within their teams, for conceptual work and drafts, and for presentation drafts and final presentations. Deadlines should also be set for any final feedback from your collaborator and for any final revisions needed. To help manage deadlines, I typically use the tools within Blackboard, but there are other open source online tools that can help to organize your timeline and project process, such as Google Calendar, Trello, and Freedcamp. Good communication is the backbone of any successful experiential learning project. Make sure you have a detailed assignment with clear expectations and deliverables for your experiential learning project. It is critical to have the collaborator or client come to talk with the students at the beginning of the project. This allows the students to learn about the project directly from the business or organization that originated it and ask any questions. Because of the evolving and sometimes changing nature of an experiential learning project, it is often important to have the personal contact information of all involved. For students, I have an expectation outlined in the syllabus for them to share a personal email and phone. If anyone feels uncomfortable with this, Google Voice can be used to set up an intermediary phone number that forwards calls to your direct line. Clark State is currently using Vonage, which allows your office phone number to be set up through an app on your computer desktop or on an app on your personal smartphone without revealing your personal number. Vonage has also made it possible for my office phone number to receive text messages. I also encourage students to set up preferred communication with each other so they can communicate with their team as needed. As already stated, synchronous online class meetings are set up through Blackboard Collaborate, and when doing asynchronous online courses, discussion boards within the learning management system can assist with communication. In addition to discussion boards, I've included a list of some online tools that can help with online communication. Of course, everyone will have email and also be able to send and receive course messages through the learning management system you are using. Discord allows you to set up a voice, video, and text communication group. If you didn't know about Zoom before the pandemic, you probably know about it now. Clark State recently got an enterprise membership, so I use it now for virtual meetings outside of class. The college also has enterprise access to LifeSize, but now I'm a bigger fan of using Zoom. I used GoToMeeting for several years, but have stopped since the college moved over to Zoom. Some of my students and colleagues prefer to use Google Hangouts, Google Meet, Marco Polo, Skype, or Microsoft Teams, so I've listed those as well. Your students can't get too good at public speaking and presenting their work to others. This is a critical skill that will make your students better communicators. Some of my colleagues require a final report versus a presentation, and this can be effective as well. I think experiential learning works best when there is a strong finish to the work that has been completed. It is important to include draft presentations during the process for feedback as well. These can be internal among members of the team or the entire class, or external presentations to the collaborator or client to elicit feedback before final submission. Online slideshow tools like Google Slides, Microsoft PowerPoint 365, Microsoft Sway, or Prezi allow for collaborative online editing, and slideshows can be uploaded to SlideShare and embedded into websites if needed. For asynchronous online presentations, I have had students use Screencast-O-Matic to record presentations. Some of my colleagues recommend Loom. Some of my students have learned to use Open Broadcaster software to record live gaming and use this platform to do their presentation recordings. Of course, a good way to share video presentations is to post them on YouTube to allow easy sharing of links versus submission of large video files. Take time in every class to do some reflection. This can be an important time of problem solving and discovery for students. It is also a good space for students to express their struggles with any part of the process and help release some of the unexpected stress that can come with working on real-world projects. Reflection can be through discussion or journaling. If there is not enough time in class or students are working in asynchronous online courses, you can leverage online discussion boards within the learning management system. In synchronous courses, video conferencing can be used for discussion. The platform Discord can be used for online chat. WordPress.com, Tumblr, Google Sites, and Google Blogger are good asynchronous online course journaling options that can be used by students. Now that we have looked at the ingredients for successful experiential learning, let's take a look at some structural elements from one of our earlier examples. Here is an example timeline from one of the Ohio Communication Association projects I mentioned earlier. The preliminary section includes the timeline for things to happen before the start of the semester. A few months out, I will email the OCA representative to verify continued participation and get a rough idea of the projects they have in mind. About a month out from the beginning of the semester, I will send an email to get more specific project details and update the assignment in Blackboard. About 1 week out, when the class starts to finalize enrollment, I will start to make the group assignments based on the students I know I will have for the class. For the Graphic Design Service Learning class, students will typically do 5 service learning projects, one every 3 weeks. Class meets for an hour and 50 minutes twice a week. For the OCA project, where students design the conference program cover and postcard, the client came on Tuesday of week 1 to talk about OCA and the conference theme and answer any questions that students had. Students then met in virtual breakout groups to work on thumbnails. 2 thumbnails were chosen to develop into pencil comps, which were due on the Thursday of week 1. At Thursday's class, we began with some whole group reflection and clarified any necessary items, and then throughout the rest of the project, each class began with some brief reflection with the entire class together. After reflection, the pencil comps were reviewed during virtual breakout groups, and one of the pencil comps was chosen to move forward. In week 2, the students shared their layout and typography choices with each other in breakout groups, and on Thursday, the students presented their color comps to the client for review and comments. Each student was responsible for creating their own comp, so even though they were working together in groups, there was still an individual responsibility for all involved. On the Tuesday of week 3, we again began with reflection time with the whole class together, and then students met in virtual breakout groups to make any final updates. For the Thursday class of week 3, we held an open virtual lab all together where students could share their final designs for review, make any final edits, and submit their final files. Files were sent to the client for final review by the Friday of week 3 with a request to return final selections and any final revisions needed by the Tuesday of week 4, while students had already started on the next project. If the client ever needs additional time, sometimes this is extended to the Thursday of week 4. The final files for OCA were revised and finalized by the chosen student and returned to the client by week 5. Because of the nature of experiential learning with real clients, it is established in the syllabus that students who miss class are encouraged to send the files in advance and notify the instructor first, and then their group members. In general, students have been good about holding to this expectation. When it does not happen, it does not affect or penalize the rest of the group in any way. As already mentioned, I use Blackboard Collaborate within a Blackboard Learning Shell to have my synchronous virtual meetings, but other technologies with similar functionality could also be used. I send a guest link to the client in order for them to attend the class. Screen sharing was used to walk through the assignment, share examples, provide visual feedback on work, and provide any software demos needed. Students could raise their hand to ask questions using their mic or use chat. The The virtual breakout rooms work very well with me being able to adjust group assignments as needed and to go back and forth between groups to check in with students and do review. The file sharing tools within the breakout groups were also extremely useful, as students can share files and the interface is set up that I could write on their pieces to show potential areas for revisions. The students would then take a screenshot so they would have a copy of the revision notes. All sessions were recorded, and Camtasia was used as a backup recording in case the recording in Blackboard Collaborate failed. Camtasia also allowed for recording in the breakout rooms while the instructor was visiting, which cannot be done through Blackboard. Students were notified that recordings were taking place and could access them after class when needed. Some of the other tools used were Adobe Creative Cloud, which is a subscription-based software used in the fields of graphic design and new media. The course uses Open Educational Resources, or OER, as a textbook, so that the only significant cost for the course materials is the Adobe Creative Cloud subscription. Email was used for correspondence with the client, and course messages within Blackboard were used for conceptual work submissions. Google Drive was used by the students and I for file sharing, including examples they could download and other digital resources they would need for projects. I also used Microsoft OneDrive for file sharing because of the file limits within Google Drive, and had an additional computer set up for backup. I thought that providing an example of the Ohio Communication Association assignment structure would assist you in putting together your own experiential learning assignments. Of course, the assignment starts with the title, and then I put the timeline at the top for easy reference. The timeline includes conceptual deadlines, the presentation to the client, the final deadline, and time estimate and time actual deadlines. The time estimate and time actual part of the assignment is something that has been requested of my advisory, so students understand how long it takes them to put projects together. That way, when they work with employers, they can help project potential time it takes for completion, which in turn a business can use to provide a budget estimate to their clients. I include a brief introduction where I emphasize the importance of doing research before jumping into conceptual work and outline my role as instructor in the process. The next section of the assignment outlines group assignments and lists the project managers assigned, along with detailing the responsibilities of the project manager. A design brief includes the project title, the client, the target audience, and general description with some starter links for research. The deliverables and technical specifications are listed, along with the details about the text to be included in the design, conceptual expectations, presentation expectations, and budget. There is a submission section in the assignment that has a breakdown of the files needed and directions for the digital submission of larger files, which includes how to zip files together and share through a Google Drive. At the end of the assignment is a breakdown of the grading rubric categories used, descriptions of each rubric category, and a listing of total points possible. Here is a sample of the final OCA project that was chosen during the Synchronous Online Service Learning Capstone course that ran in spring of 2021. The success of the OCA conference program cover and postcard design led to OCA also working with our students on a potential logo design that was completed during the Synchronous Online Service Learning Capstone in spring of 2021. Students also designed posters for OCA that were completed in the traditional in-person version of the Service Learning Capstone course that ran in spring of 2020 before the pandemic hit. We are in the home stretch now, and I wanted to leave you with a gift. I had these resources listed throughout the presentation, but I thought it might be helpful for you to have these in one location, and have even added some. A copy of this presentation will be provided to you, so you can follow the links to these resources and find out more. On this slide, I included resources for facilitating video conferencing, sharing files, journaling online, and collaborating online for file creation. On this slide, I included resources for creating collaborative presentations, creating a podcast, recording your screen, and facilitating project management and organization. I also included the Open Educational Resource Guide to help you set up your own podcast for free, and a resource list of free open source online tools that may assist you in your teaching that I call Tech Teach Free Resources. I wanted to take a moment to thank my students. They've made me so proud of how they have handled and embraced experiential learning in the graphic design and new media programs at Clark State. I was glad that I was able to share some of their great work today. I'm thankful for my colleagues who provided me the examples that are included and who have always been supportive. I'm privileged to work alongside them. Thank you to the many industry partners and community collaborators that have helped make experiential learning at Clark State possible. I also want to thank the Clark State administration and staff who support the experiential learning efforts and have stepped into classes to be experiential learning collaborators. Last but not least, I want to thank NISOD, the National Institute for Staff and Organizational Development, for accepting my proposal to talk about online experiential learning for student success and giving me the opportunity to talk to you about it today. I greatly appreciate the professional development work they are continuing to do to support community and technical colleges around the country. Here is my contact information. Please feel free to reach out to me to share your own experiential learning examples or any ideas that you have for developing experiential learning in your own traditional, hybrid, or online classes. I would love to also connect with you on Twitter or Instagram. If you would like to see additional student work from the graphic design and new media programs, please go to youtube.com/user/csdigmedia or check out our page on Instagram. I have also included links to my 2 programs if you would like to learn more. Thank you so much for your time today.